Well, today I want to talk a little bit about heating solutions. Now, you probably know that I haven't needed heat for a long time. I lived in Arizona and before that, Southern California. So when I got to Colorado, I had my work cut out for me. I really had to do a lot of research to figure out what the current options are, which option is best for me in this particular situation. But I learned a lot in the process, and I thought it might be fun to share some of that information with you because there's a lot of options. First up is forced air heaters that run on gas, either natural gas, propane, kerosene, or diesel. These are pretty efficient but do require a gas supply, an exhaust, and preferably a clean air intake and a sealed combustion chamber to prevent any major issues from the presence of wood dust or finishing fumes in the air. Next up is forced air electric heaters. Similar in concept to the gas versions, these units rely solely on electricity to generate heat. While easy to install, the obvious drawback is the increased electric bill. Then there's infrared tube heat. For the first couple of days of my research period, I became convinced that infrared was the only way to go. It has an enclosed combustion chamber, makes very little noise, and doesn't blow any air around the shop. The infrared energy, just like the sun, is unique in that it warms the objects and bodies instead of warming the air. In fact, you can stand in front of one of these just after turning it on and immediately feel the heat on your skin. But the more research I did, the more I realized that this might not be the best solution for me. First, the tubes are large and they have to cover a fairly significant area of the shop to be effective. Second, this type of heat can result in hot and cold spots. At least while it's bringing the room up to temperature, you could easily end up with a hot face and cold feet. But those who have these units installed seem to really love them, so your mileage may vary. How about pellet and wood stoves? Now, these are probably the most old school option. You can simply drop a big old oven in the shop and start burning stuff. Obviously, you need to exhaust it as well. These things can really crank out the heat, but you do have to keep stocked up on fuel. And if you're concerned about kids or pets, this could be a big safety issue. Also, there could be insurance and code ramifications for installing something like this in a residential garage space. Next up, ductless mini-split heat pumps. Now this one is near and dear to my heart since I've been running these in Arizona for the last 5 to 6 years, though I can count on one hand the number of times that I've actually used the heat setting. These units consist of an outside compressor unit and an indoor head unit that blows warm or cold air into the space. They're very energy efficient and super quiet. As a heater, they aren't very aggressive and they generally won't work very well once the temperature drops below a certain point. And finally, there's radiant in-floor heating. After all of my research, I have to say that this, in my opinion, is the gold standard in comfortable, efficient heating. It works by pumping warm water through tubes in the floor. A properly installed radiant system will heat the entire space from below evenly and without the need for extremely high temperature heat sources. But it generally does require installation prior to pouring the slab. Now there are ways to install it in a new subfloor on top of the slab, but that's a long ways off for me, so even though I think it's the best solution, it's just not practical right now. Now obviously, there's a lot of other options available to woodworkers, but these seem to be the most popular and accessible options. So what did I wind up doing? Well, I went with the easiest thing first. Now, I brought with me a Mitsubishi mini-split ductless heat pump. I thought if we install this, let's see how it works. It was a little bit undersized for this space, but I figured, hey, if it does any heat at all, it's probably gonna be decent. And then I could add a supplemental heater to bring the temperature up and then let the mini-split keep it up to temperature. Well, the problem was the installation itself. In order to get this thing installed here, we had to put the compressor on the front porch. And man, was that an eyesore. I thought we could live with it, and we figured, hey, it's for the business, let's just do it. And after a couple of weeks, we just decided, no, that's bad. And unfortunately, we wasted money on that install and wind up taking the whole thing out again. Now, there is one more location where I might be able to put that compressor, but it's a lot more work. It's gonna cost a lot more money to install because it's further away and will likely require busting up some concrete to get all the tubes and everything that need to go and the power that needs to go to the compressor. So that is a future thing, but we had the dang thing installed and then had it taken out. All right, so I had to go to plan B. Plan B was a gas-powered forced air unit. Now, these seemed like they would be pretty easy to install, but I had an HVAC company come out and we looked at the situation, and unfortunately, where my gas lines are means that there's going to be a lot of work to be able to connect the gas line properly to the unit. Also, again, the whole eyesore factor, the positioning of this garage means that the vent would have to go out toward the front of the house, near the front porch. So again, I'm trying not to recreate the situation I just created with that mini split. So I kind of pulled back from it, especially because the bid we received for it was over $5,000. Now, of course, I would go to a couple different contractors and see if we couldn't get a much better price than that. But this was a trustworthy HVAC person who's actually worked on other things on his house. And I don't know, I was a little bit surprised, but the bottom line was the eyesore factor, and it just was cost prohibitive. So I figured let's shelve that idea and move on to the next option. So where I finally wound up was pretty much the path of least resistance in terms of installation and cost, and that's forced air electric. Now, the big drawback with this is power costs a lot of money, right? So my electric bill is definitely going to go up, but I could get these units installed, have the shop warmed up, and that means I can actually work, which is the thing that makes the money that pays the bills anyway. So for now, I think this is a really good solution. And let me show you what I have here. So I have two different models made by the same company called Fahrenheit. The one behind me is 7,500 watts. That's pretty darn powerful. And the one over here is 5,000. Now they're actually configurable to different wattages. So I think the 7,500 can be configured for 3,750 watts, and the 5,000 can also be dropped down to 2,500 depending on your needs. So I had an electrician come in, wire it up for me just to make sure it's nice and safe. And I have them hung in such a way that they're trying to create sort of a circular pattern of air around the shop, and they work in unison with each other. Now, given the location, as high as they are, it's about 11 feet to the ceiling, I'm gonna need to add some ceiling fans to help push down the air because right now a lot of the heat, of course, is gonna stay sort of in a pocket at the ceiling. So we do need some air mixing to make this work, but even as they are right now, it works pretty darn well. The cost for these, about $400 for the 7,500 watt unit, and I think about $250 for this guy. So with the cost of the electrician, I actually was able to help the electrician to save on money. I like to do that when people work on the house. I'm like, hey, do you need a helper? If it saves me money, I'll help you today. So these were installed overall. I think we're looking at maybe $1,500 for the total investment for installation and the cost of the units. So performance-wise, I'm extremely happy with the two units. Basically, first thing in the morning, I come in, turn them on. No matter what the temperature is in the shop, within about 45 minutes, hour at the most, I've got a comfortable working temperature. Usually I come out in a hooded jacket like this, and then within 10 or 15 minutes, I'm taking this off because it's getting too warm. So I do have to climb up the ladder to reach those thermostats, which is a huge pain in the butt. But I have read online there are solutions for adding an external thermostat that we could then run down the wall, and then I don't have to worry about the ladder. I didn't do a shut off at the unit. If I really need to shut them off, I could do that at the circuit breaker because it's so easily accessible. But when I do the thermostat, I may consider either putting in, a little plug module there or some kind of a switch or something. But right now, this is simple, it works really well, and it definitely heats the shop. Now, when we talked about the different types of heaters, we talked about infrared being one that warms all the objects first and then the air, and this type of heater being something that warms the air and then eventually the objects warm up. So you might be wondering, if I open a garage door, which I actually do every morning to be able to take my son to school, how much cold air comes in? How much hot air do we lose? I have no way of quantifying that, but ultimately just opening it real quick, getting into the car, shutting it, and doing that again 15 minutes later doesn't really seem to have any, sort of impact that I can feel. Obviously, air is going to exchange. If you keep that door open for a long time, it's going to be a problem. But I don't really see it being super problematic to open it quickly and then lower it again. Ultimately, once everything is up to temperature in here and the floor is a little warmer, the walls are warmer, the tools are all warmer, opening and closing a door isn't really going to just suddenly chill everything. It may cause the heaters to stay on a little bit longer, but I don't think that's that big of a deal. It's a garage, right? It's a shop, so we're not going to be super picky about it like we might be inside a house. So far, so good. And the final question is the electric bill. Now, we haven't had these things running long enough for me to give you that perspective, and I'll certainly let you know as soon as our first bill comes in, because it's probably going to hurt. But ultimately, again, this was just a factor of how quickly can I get myself back to work? Because if I don't work, I don't make money. So you have to sort of do a cost-benefit analysis and figure out if it's worth it. Ultimately, in the long run, we might do something different, but for now, this is gonna get the job done. All right, so next time, you may have already noticed, we have new lights. Next time, we'll talk about that installation.